Hey, Rec Techies, how's it going today? And another fine Thursday afternoon. I'm Chris Russell, as always, from rectechmedia.com. And we've got my friend here, Ewan Hayward from Emissary on the line from New York City. Say hello, Ewan.
Hey guys.
All right. Today we're going to talk about a great topic, I think, best practices in text recruiting with our friends from Emissary.ai, Ewan's company. We'll have them give us an intro in a few minutes around what they do and who he is. Let's get to a few shout outs here. No show next week. Working on a few new shows for the upcoming week, so stay tuned for that stuff. Got over 60 registered today, so I see Stephen O'Donnell's here, Matt, Kendra, Brendan, your fellow emissaries are joining the call. Ewan, Pamela, Geary, Paul Miller's here. Hey, Paul. Woody Boyles, Beth, Diane Tarbell, Ciara, Venus, love the names, John, Caitlin, and of course Matt. So Crowdcast, yep. You can watch the replay, John, or I'll put up on YouTube as well. I usually put all these episodes up on the YouTube channel, Rec Tech Media YouTube channel as well afterwards. So if you ever have trouble with Crowdcast, you can always go watch it on there, or even on our Facebook pages as well. So, all right. So, Ewan, it's good to have you finally. You're making your webinar debut.
Good to be here,
good to finally put a face to the Emissary name. And I guess just tell us briefly about yourself and about Emissary, if you could, to get started.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm the founder and CEO of Emissary. I've got about 15 plus years of experience in talent and talent technology. In addition to Emissary, I founded Juju.com, which was one of the first aggregators in the job search space. But Emissary is where I'm putting my focus right now because of the impact that I think it can have for employers. Just high level, Emissary is an enterprise texting tool, and it's built specifically for recruiters, and it is built to work hand in hand with all of your recruiting systems. So not just your ATS, but all of the different systems that you might use in the course of your day, because we think that texting should be, a very straightforward overlay of your workflow rather than something that you need to sort of use independently of everything else that you have. So that is me and Emissary in a nutshell.
All right, cool. So just tell the audience what we're going to learn today. And we're going to cover a bunch of topics around texting, but give them a sense of what we're going to talk about today.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're really going to try to run through all of the fundamentals of texting, sort of why it matters and why people who may not be using it yet should really seriously think about it. We're also going to talk about the different use cases because there are a million different ways to apply the technology, and some of those are obvious, some of those are easy to overlook. So we're going to run through some of that, and then of course we're going to talk about some etiquette and best practices. It's a really powerful tool, but as with anything really powerful, I think if you do it the wrong way, you can cause harm. If you do it the right way, you can reap a lot of value. So we're just trying to ground people in some of the fundamentals and best practices so they do it the right way out of the box and get as much value as they can.
With great power comes great responsibility, as
exactly.
Phrase from Spider-Man goes. Great quote. All right, so let's get to it, and we'll get right into it here. I'll focus the slides and take it away, Ewan.
Okay, fantastic. So just as a really basic starting point for the conversation, I wanted to highlight some of the opportunities and risks that people may already be thinking about with respect to text. So I think intuitively, a lot of people grasp what may be the primary benefit, which is that response rates are better with text, response times are much better with text, and of course that has a really direct impact on your work. So you can meaningfully reduce the time to hire, and that just flows through to reducing cost per hire. But on the other side of the ledger, there are some real things that you need to think about. You can't just dive in and give it to everyone in your organization and assume that everything's going to be okay, because as with everything else in recruiting, compliance matters, and you have to check those boxes. Obviously, there are privacy concerns that are at least somewhat related to compliance. If done the wrong way, there's definitely some employer brand risk, right? Texting is sometimes a much less formal medium of communication, and if you don't have the right guardrails in place, someone in your organization might do something that doesn't make the brand look good. And another thing that's maybe in the back of people's mind, for instance, if personal devices are in play, is a lack of oversight, right? So, if you say, hey, everyone, we need to start using texting, people pick up their phones and dive in, but then how do you make sure that the best practices are being followed in the first place? One thing that we like to point out, especially with larger organizations, is we get on the phone with people who are interested in texting, and they say, oh yeah, we're not using texting. Like, my basic response is, okay, well, how many recruiters do you have? And let's say they say 50 recruiters, and our perspective is you probably are texting, or someone is, and you just don't know it. And
right.
That's great from an initiative standpoint because someone picked up their personal device, but it's bad from a compliance and oversight standpoint. So you better think about that and how you're going to deal with it. So that just sort of frames the discussion that we're going to talk about in the rest of the deck.
Gotcha.
So why texting matters? These are numbers that I think people all understand. Every one of us probably has a smartphone, and the statistics confirm that. And every one of us probably has that intuitive grasp that, hey, I use my messaging apps, whether text or other things, more than basically everything else on the phone. So, if you're an organization and you haven't adopted text, or at least experimented, you got to think about it. How on earth do you think you're going to reach people when you're not using the preferred communications medium? So these are just sort of some high level things to put it in perspective. But getting beyond one layer down the onion is like, okay, well, how much do they use it? And so so this number, 55 minutes a day texting, my suspicion is that there's high level of variance, and you probably have a good third of the user base who's doing a lot more than that. And it's important to note that this is texting, so messaging overall could well be double that or triple that, who knows. There's probably some demographic impact there. Maybe the younger you are, the more minutes a day, but you get the idea. People, subtract the hours that you're sleeping, committing an hour a day to a single activity is a pretty big commitment. Response time is a huge deal. And this number, 6,000% or 60 times faster, like it just seems made up, right? And of course, your mileage may vary. But at the same time, it's typical in what we see that, response times can go from days to minutes and often to seconds. So, for our own recruiting activities, we will send out messages to individual candidates, and it is common for us to get a response back within 30 seconds. I had one candidate who said, I pulled to the side of the road and sent you this message. I hope that's true. I hope he didn't just make that up.
Okay.
So there's a huge level of immediacy. And then, one of the hang-ups that people might have is to say, well, do people really want to communicate with businesses this way? It's definitely something to keep in mind. at every stage in the process? And the answer is invariably, well, probably some people yes and some people no. But, you know, the numbers confirm that if we're talking about a substantive interaction, and now this isn't, you know, someone spamming you with a text message, you know, a business that you have no relationship with. But if you're talking about a business that you do have a relationship with, want a relationship with, most people are pretty comfortable with it. Why? Because it's easier. It's better than an email that's going to get buried, and it's better, you know, than a voicemail for sure. I mean, good luck getting those responded to these days. So those are important things to think about. So this just captures the meat of the opportunity in some sense, right? Most people are using email as their default means of communication. And once again, maybe I'll say it a few more times during this webinar, your mileage may vary, but there's no question that email open rates are much lower than text. And there's no question that median and average response times are much lower than text. And why is that? It's because we're all glued to our devices all the time. You know, it's you know, obviously I'm in the midst of this call and my phone is literally 12 inches from my hand. And probably the same is true for most of the people on here. So, you know, yeah. So the immediacy and the impact is huge. And we're going to get into more detail about, okay, so it's easy to sort of glaze over when you see numbers like that and say, oh yeah, sure, sure, sure. But when you see what that does down your recruiting funnel, the impact is too big to ignore. This isn't, you know, some technologies, good technologies are 10% better, 20% better, 30% better. That's not the case here. It's order of magnitude better, and that's something that no one can ignore, in our opinion. So, okay, those are lots of statistics, but just in sort of an anecdotal sense, you know, why is this such a good fit for recruiting? And bottom line, it's brief, it's convenient, and it's direct. This is about getting the job done as efficiently as possible for you, as efficiently as possible for the candidate. And, you know, the bottom line is the reason people like text so much more than other means of communication is that in some sense it's more respectful of people's time, right? Or at least it allows them to organize their time more efficiently. So if you think about the convenience line item, you know, you can just dive right in. If you're in the elevator and respond to someone, you're probably not going to pick up the call. You're probably not going to tap out an email. The same thing as if you're in line for lunch or doing any number of other things. And that synergy, the ability to use the otherwise slack time in our day, which we don't have very much of, is what allows the message to get through when other mediums just don't really work that well. So this is what it boils down to when you start to think about the ROI on utilizing text. So you can, I would encourage you to plug in any numbers that you think are realistic, but these, broadly speaking, are realistic numbers. Probably the response rate on email is a little high, if anything. But what does this mean as you get down the funnel with people you're trying to be in contact with, right? So that starting point of 80% versus 20% open rate, and again, that open rate is probably low, right? But we want to be conservative here. So if you start with 100 messages at the top of the funnel and you get an 80% response rate, you're going to get 80 versus 20 messages that are opened. And then how many of the people who open a message respond? You know, 64 responses versus 10 responses. And again, this is an easy spreadsheet to do. If you think my numbers are optimistic, plug in your own numbers. But the differences are big, and you know, it's realistic to see, you know, a 5, 6, 7x increase in the number of responses.
Are these emissary specific data numbers?
Yeah, so this is obviously based off of our internal data, but it's not, that kind of ROI is just inherent to text, not inherent to emissary. I wish I could tell you it was limited to emissary, right? But
I've never seen a number like that in terms of the ROI, so it's pretty cool. 6.4.
So of course, looking at it in terms of responses is great, but what does it mean potentially in terms of dollars or effort invested? So, again, these are maybe a little fuzzier numbers, and you can again plug your own numbers in. But if you think about, for a recruiter, an average nationwide fully loaded cost somewhere in the ballpark of 70 grand, right? And if you just make the rough cut of 2,000 hours a year and assume they spend about a third of their time communicating, you're spending $24,000 a year communicating. Now that can mean a lot of things, but again, tweak as you see fit and see where you come out. So that's 660 hours a year and 83 days per year time spent communicating. So if you can do something that dramatically increases your efficiency the way that texting can, what could that mean, right? So if you look at the texting column, okay, in theory, you could reduce your time communicating to a fraction of what it was, or potentially you could spend the same amount of time communicating and just get vastly more done. But for the sake of this example, you can take a pretty decent stab at what the value on a per recruiter basis might be for improving the efficiency of communication in your organization. So, one thing that we sort of point out is for a modern, recruiting organization that's already checked like all the basics, there is probably nothing that's going to yield higher ROI than texting in terms of additions to your recruitment stack, because there's just nothing else that can deliver numbers like that, we think. And if there is, we'd like to know what it is. We'll build it into the product. Okay, so we've run through the numbers from a variety of different angles. It's useful to talk about some of the different ways that people can use it and how it can be impactful in an organization. There are a million use cases, and we're not going to cover all of them. So I'm just going to zip through these relatively quickly, just so you can get a sense, and maybe that can be useful for thinking about it or asking questions or whatever. But obviously, initial contact. Initial contact is so important because it's what sets the stage for engagement. There are a lot of stats out there that if you don't reach someone in a very narrow window of time early on, you lose their attention, and you're probably going to lose the applicant. And the truth is that happens in every other industry too. Like that's true in sales, that's true in life, right? You have people's attention for a short amount of time. So a lot of people use it for initial contact. It's also incredibly powerful for candidate re-engagement. Most large organizations have huge candidate databases which are filled with lots of qualified candidates. Obviously not everyone, but if you've got a hard to fill requisition, you look at your database and you say, hey, I've got 500 people here that have already expressed, interest in the organization, have qualifications that I'm looking for. I know they're in the area, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Well, I want to engage those people. And if you do it with text, you can make it really personal and you can get incredible response rates out of the gate. And that can accelerate the time to hire really dramatically. Not to mention potentially save you some money on filling a position that you then don't have to post and pay to drive traffic to. So that's another key use case.
Got a quick question for you, Ewan. I know, I think Indeed has a kind of an opt-in when you're applying to a job, maybe. I think it says something like, check here if you want to get notified via text about your status or something like that. Are you seeing ATSs start to implement those kind of features in their products overall with their client base?
Do you mean implement the permissions or implement the messaging capability?
The permissions, I guess, because I guess you do need to get the candidate's permission in order to text them, correct?
Well, we're going to get into that in a little bit more detail later in the presentation.
Okay.
So I would say that it's not nearly as prevalent as it should be. I think that a lot of ATSs are starting to think more seriously, but are, maybe behind where they should be in actually taking action. And ultimately, something like that probably needs to be client driven, right? The customer has to go to their ATS and say, hey, we want this messaging added to our apply page because we're probably going to want to use that. Now, whether or not that's strictly necessary from a legal standpoint is a question we'll get into in a little bit.
Cool.
Okay, so scheduling is another huge area, right? So you're trying to lock someone down, or maybe you need to remind them about an appointment that they've already made. This can really reduce no-show rates if you're doing open houses and things like that. We've got some big clients in retail that see immediate major impact on no-show rates for events and things like that. But of course, you can use it in any context related to scheduling. Screening, of course, there are some things, excuse me, that you're going to want to talk with them in person or on the phone in more detail. But there are a lot of, very basic knockout questions, and honestly, some more in-depth topics that are probably easier to get out of the way via text. And you can do that potentially on an automated or semi-automated basis, or you can do it on a one-to-one basis, just as a recruiter. So one of the things that sort of came out of the woodwork, you build a platform and then people start using it and they come up with their own use cases. And one of the things that we've gotten a lot of is people saying, okay, I need to coordinate with the candidates, but you know what? I've got these people in the field and I'm worried that the candidate is going to have a bad experience because they show up and the hiring manager has forgotten that they have an interview that day. So I want to reach out to my hiring managers and make sure they're on, the bus in advance. So you can squeeze out efficiency that way. And in fact, it even morphs further from there and gets out of recruiting. People will use text to announce open enrollment because that email is probably going to get buried, and that's going to be a hassle if people miss the deadline. Or, let's say, for example, a major hurricane is about to shut down your warehouse, in Georgia somewhere, or South Carolina, or wherever Dorian is right now. You might need to keep in contact with your team, and texting may be the most efficient way to do that. So there's really a lot of different ways that you can implement it, but internal communication is a major one. Seasonal hiring. So obviously a lot of organizations hire huge numbers of seasonal workers, and one thing that seems to be relatively consistent is that a lot of those seasonal workers come back several years in a row. But let's say you're a major ski resort and you've got 10,000 20-something ski bums that you need to reach out to, a few months before the winter season, find out who's coming back. Well, the old way would be to email them or to have their manager last year reach out, but that's going to be, well, frankly, a boondoggle. It's going to be really hard to communicate and coordinate. But if you can, export from your HCM or applicant tracking system, a file with all of those people from last year and say, hey, are you planning to come back? We'd love to have you. It's going to be a great season, that sort of thing. You can get literally months and months worth of work done in hours. So campus recruiting is another good use case, and this is where short codes come in. Short codes are short strings, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, something like that, and you can text a keyword to them and get back specific content. So, let's say your organization invests in sending people, off-site to these types of events. You're only one person or two people. You can not talk to everyone. So you're going to have students who are drifting by that may be interested but don't really have a way to engage. If you give them a short code and a keyword, maybe the name of your organization, you can text them back, a link to a video about your management development program, or maybe just say, hey, thanks for stopping by. A recruiter will reach out to you in the next 24 hours. So that's another powerful way to use short codes and use texting. So kind of a variant of that would be like retail and hospitality, where you get a lot of walk-in applicants to a storefront. Well, an applicant walks up to the register and says, hey, are you guys hiring? Can I talk to the manager? You're delaying customers. You're waylaying the manager who probably has other things to do. You'd be better off putting some sort of signage out there, let people engage. You can send them a link, directly to your job application flow on the spot. And you can get more specific than that. You could say, let's say it's a fast food chain, you could send them back a question like, do you have any food handling certifications? Yes or no. And if they answer no, maybe a polite rejection. If they answer yes, you're one step further down the funnel.
Okay. What's the most frequently used use case, do you think?
I think one-to-one communication. Someone applies, you need to engage them and get the ball rolling. It's the easiest and most universal. But I think that some of the most, and that's hugely valuable, but some of the really big impact stuff is around campaigns, and some of the, you need to reach out to, there are retailers that might need to reach out to 10,000 people at once. If you can do that more efficiently, that's just a monumental potential impact right out of the gate.
I think reminders have a lot of great ROI in them too. Just reminding them constantly about, hey, you got an interview coming up, or here's the directions, or you're meeting with this person, that kind of stuff. That really helps. I think the ghosting aspect too that we're hearing about these days.
Yeah. There's just so many different ways. And what we often talk to people about is, most organizations have a lot of things in common with others in terms of how they might want to use this, but they often also have a unique pain point that texting might be able to address. And it's only through, real thought and consideration does that get bubbled up to the surface. But, you never know what that's going to be. So we had a conversation with an oil services company recently, and their people are out on a race. There's no email, there's no other means of communicating, but how do you communicate with your workforce? Well, text is probably a great way to do it.
Yep.
So jumping into some of the best practices stuff, we like to try to focus people on the most simple sort of guideline that we can, at least out of the gate. And, we call it the golden rule, but the golden rule is to respect that texting is personal. It's the reason, one of many reasons that it's so effective is that people prioritize it over most other forms of communication. But, to repeat what we were talking about earlier, great power comes with great responsibility. And it's very important as a recruiter to realize that some people are going to react differently than others. And this is where those, human skills that recruiters really, have spent their careers developing come in. You need to read the situation and calibrate things appropriately in order to make it the whole interaction and build the relationship as effectively as possible. So diving into some more specific best practices and sort of points of etiquette, you know, essentially, as I just mentioned, people are going to react differently to texting. You know, I actually think for the most part, it's not useful to characterize people by, you know, age demographic in terms of habits. Definitely, there are some overarching themes, but penetration is total at this point, or nearly total. And, you know, people who you might think aren't comfortable with this, that, or the other, you know, might be more comfortable, you think. My mom sends me emojis all the time and I can't stand them. But, you know, hey, it's just people have different preferences.
Oh, you don't like emojis?
No, I don't. I'm willing to go on the record with that.
You heard it here first.
Hot button issue for a lot of people, I know. So just some obvious stuff. Well, okay, I don't like, excuse me, I should have said Bitmojis.
Oh, Bitmoji.
Bitmojis.
I have a Bitmoji.
Too much. But that's one man's opinion. You know, these are practical considerations, but it's easy to overlook them. If you're a recruiter on the East Coast and you're reaching out to someone in California, maybe don't send something at, you know, 9 in the morning, which is going to hit them at 6 and maybe wake them up. You know, you always want to pay attention to those niceties. You know, there's a big question, is it appropriate to send stuff off hours, on weekends, things like that? On the one hand, it may come down to your preferences, right? If you want to send a text to a candidate on a weekend, I would say there's a very good chance they're going to accept that and be totally on board with it. But if you send them a text on the weekend and they respond, they're going to expect a response back from you. So you kind of have to set the right boundaries that you're comfortable with. And if you're not comfortable with it, you know, and someone reaches out and says, you know, hey, what's the status of my application, or I don't know what, you know, on a weekend, you know, maybe it's July 4th or something like that, you know, you can just sort of politely steer them back to, you know, the work week as needed, if that's your communication preference.
Do some of those like automated texts actually say that, you know, this is an automated message, or just to give a little more context around for the candidate?
Well, you know, generally you want to make it more personal and more human than not. I mean, I guess it depends, but for the most part, I would say not. You know, but
I think I've seen that on a few, I don't know, you know, services or something I belong to, or whatever. It might say, this is an automated message, just to remind you, whatever, I don't know, just to give some context, I think.
Yeah, sure. I mean, you know, it depends on the application. And if you're talking about applications outside recruiting, I think it's a little different. But, you know, recruiting is about relationships. And relationships need to be personal in order to be valuable. So going too automated, I think, is probably a mistake. At least it's situation dependent. So a few other things to consider. There may be certain topics that as an organization you want to say shouldn't be discussed via text. Salary negotiation might be an example, or maybe there are other items that just seem like they need to be addressed by phone or by some other means. So that's really a standard that needs to be set internally, but it's something worth thinking about. Kind of, you know, as with anything, there are ways you can sort of inadvertently screw something up. Copy pasting is a big culprit there. You know, you might find yourself reusing messages and you call someone by the wrong name and suddenly they're not so interested in talking to you. So, you know, advanced texting platforms will have message templates and ways to help you deal with that, but it's something to consider. You know, let's say if you've got your own internal strategy or using personal devices, things like that. You know, the last one is obvious, but still worth repeating. Keep it short. That's what texting is for. No one needs to read a novel in a text message. So this is just sort of a few key points. Always use the candidate's name. Keep it simple. Just sort of said that, and then respond quickly. So if you want candidates to respond quickly, you should do the same. Which isn't to say that everything needs a response in a few seconds, especially once a rapport has been built up. But if you leave something to go cold, then you're going to have wasted some of the value of the medium, I think.
Yeah. What I want to know is maybe if anybody in the chat room wants to chime up on this, have any of you actually cold texted a candidate to try and break through that noise and get them to respond to you? I'd be curious if that's ever happened. I'm sure it has, but have you ever heard a story like that, Ewan?
People cold texting candidates?
Yeah.
Well, I guess the question is how cold. Yeah, of course. I mean, of course people do that. We would advise people, if you're quote unquote cold texting someone who, has previously had a relationship with the organization, that's very different than, buying a list online and blasting people that way. We do not recommend the latter for a variety of reasons, but mostly legal. And, legal and, I don't know, maybe good manners, but, truly cold texting is something that organizations should be very, very careful about if they want to contemplate it at all. But our position is they probably shouldn't.
Gotcha.
Okay, so getting kind of more into the legal aspect of things. Texting is not like email. So we're all used to sort of burying things in privacy policies where, we know no one's going to read it. With texting, you really should be upfront. So strictly speaking, if you're a hiring organization and someone has applied to a job, or they already work for you, or they worked for you in the past, or they've applied in the past, you're probably fine from a legal standpoint because there's a relationship that already exists. It's not a completely cold solicitation. It's not marketing. But, regardless of the strict letter of the law, you're always going to be better off getting permission and throwing that up on your site. There's no lawyer on earth that's going to tell you you're better off not getting someone's permission. So when you do that, make sure it's really clear. Put the message about that right next to the phone number field. You can even highlight it as a benefit to the candidate. Like, this is a way to enhance their view of your employer brand because people are going to prefer this. So you can highlight that. And ultimately, any organization needs to come to its own conclusion about legal issues. And for that, they need to consult the TCPA, which is the Telephone Consumer Protection Act. The legal issues are they're easy to address, but you have to give them thought before you dive in with both feet or jump in with both feet.
Yeah, it's a good point. It's a good differentiator if you're, if you want to tell candidates, hey, you get a faster response by, providing your phone number for us. Willing to bet that more, the majority of them will choose that channel.
Yeah, and look, people talk a lot about the black hole. The speed of communication has a lot to do with that. So you make it easier for them. People expect consumer style experiences from basically every business they interact with at this point, and texting helps you provide that.
The speed of hiring today is so important for the candidate experience.
Yeah,
it can't be understated. And I think more organizations, TA organizations, need to adopt that mindset. You got to speed up that hiring process as fast as possible because So if they're getting stuck somewhere in the process, you're going to lose them.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. So, there are some things that are going to need to be established by the team. You're going to have internal standards for your organization. You're going to want to discuss what those should be, and you're going to want to codify them, in a texting policy to make sure that your brand guidelines are followed, the legal boxes are checked, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. This is like any other communications medium. There are things you're going to have to do policy-wise to make sure that everyone is on board and understands what the rules are. And so at least, in the unlikely event that something does go off the rails, at least you can say, hey, you had training on this policy. We've been very clear about what our standards are. Why did you go and do that? As we touched on at the beginning, you may think you're not using texting, but there's a good chance there are recruiters out there in your organization, if it's large enough, that are doing it on their personal device, and that's a great initiative, but it raises a lot of compliance questions. How would you respond in the event of an audit? If you want to capture those benefits, it is useful to think about what you can do to centralize those communications in order to create oversight and accountability. And obviously, platforms like Emissary are essentially designed to do that, among many other things. So, kind of the last and most basic best practice is be clear. Be clear about who you are, be clear about why you're reaching out, and be clear about what you want to happen next. If you do those things, address the candidate by name, give them the context of the position that you're recruiting for, and that they applied for something with your company in the past. And obviously you need to have a call to action. You need to say, hey, can we talk, or tell me about this, or whatever it is. If you do all those things, you will get fantastic responses from candidates. If you don't do those things, then you'll sow the seeds of confusion, or maybe people will be more likely to view it as marketing or spammy or something like that. But make it personal, make it brief, get to the point. It's really simple stuff, but at the same time, it can be easy to stray from those things if you're not really thinking about it consistently. So that wraps up the material that we've prepared, but we'd love to talk through any questions. And I should also mention that anyone that wants to reach out to us with more questions to brainstorm, or if you want to learn more about Emissary specifically, you can drop us a note at the email address at the bottom of the screen, demo@Emissary.ai.
Okay. Thanks, Ewan. That was a really good information there. I think learned a lot. I have a question for you, which is describe to me kind of the user experience of this for the recruiter itself. Obviously, if they're at if they're working at an office, I'm assuming they're using a desktop. Does your product also integrate with their phone somehow? Talk more about some of the inner workings of this type of platform.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's actually a really important element of the efficiencies that you can realize. One of the big differences between texting as an individual and texting as a recruiter is scale, right? So, most of us have maybe 10 or 20 people that we might text with on a regular basis, but a recruiter could have 10x that number in a month or even a week, and it becomes really hard to keep on top of all those conversations if you're communicating at scale. And so Emissary provides a whole bunch of tools to make that easier. So, it's a full screen experience, not a type with your thumbs experience. We've got all sorts of organizational tools baked in that allows you to tag candidates, so you can organize yourself. You might be recruiting to, for 10 different requisitions at one time, and maybe there's one that's a particular priority. You need to zoom in on those conversations. Well, you need a means of tagging the candidates that are associated with those positions, so you can filter for that and then focus on that for the next hour of your workday, whatever it is, and bang that out. If it's just all on your phone and a big mess of hundreds of threads, that's going to be really labor intensive. On the campaign side, when you're doing like one-to-many outreach, reaching out to tens, hundreds, or even thousands of people, there just is no way to do that on a personal device. And so you need the ability to drag and drop a file with the data. You need a way to dynamically personalize all the messages, and of course you need a way to sort of process all the responses.
Gotcha. And this sits on top of an ATS, I assume?
Right. So there are a bunch of different ways to interact.
No. All right. Well, I guess we lost you in there. Sorry about that, folks. There was Crowdcast, or his internet went out. So appreciate you guys tuning in today. Again, go to Emissary.ai for more information. I put the links up on the chat there. Hit them up at demo@Emissary.ai, just with a quick email to get you started, and you can get a demo scheduled with those guys. So Emissary is definitely one of my sponsors for my RecTech podcast. So I know and trust these guys, and if you haven't started texting into your recruiting yet, definitely give them a shout out and get the ball rolling there. So I think it's I think it's pretty cost affordable method overall, and you can start small. I think with either a short code campaign or whatever. But no problem, Ewan. It was good to have you, and we'll get you back on the show some other time. So you're welcome, Kendra. Thanks for watching, everybody, and we'll see you soon. I'll be in contact with next shows in the coming weeks. So, and if you're going to be at HR Tech October 1st, definitely hit me up there for a beer or something. And you can use the code RecTech, RECTECH, if you want to save a few $100 off of the show ticket there. So feel free to do that, and we'll see you soon on next episode of RecTech Live. Chris out.